My name is Brendon Pishny, and I'm a local real estate investor here in Kansas City area. I have some rental properties in the area. I have been doing real estate for just under about 12 years right now, and I'm excited to talk to you guys today about getting started in real estate. So I'm going to jump right in. The year was 2013, and I was miserable. You see, a few years before that, I was working in a job, and I hated it. I had trouble getting up in the morning. I was struggling just going about my daily activities. I was really having trouble. So I went home one day and I asked my wife, Shannon, I said, Shannon, can I quit my job? And she said, yes, but. Because you know, any of you out there that are married, you know that there's always a but. So she says, yes, but then you have to stay home with the kids. And so I did, and I became a stay-at-home dad. And while I love my kids and I love my wife and I don't regret that decision at all, I was still struggling. And so I tried several different ventures. I even worked part-time for a while. I even tried network marketing. You know that thing where you go and you call a friend you haven't talked to in like 10 years and you try to sell them some product you don't even really believe in? Yeah, that network marketing. And I wasn't very good at it, but I learned a lot. But I was still just struggling. And so towards the beginning of 2013, I had this thought. And I thought, what about real estate? I mean, that can't be that hard. All you do is you buy a property, you stick somebody in there and you start renting it out. I mean, I'm a fairly organized person. I had a little bit of time on my hand. I'm really handy. So I was like, oh, I can fix about anything in there. So I thought, that sounds like a pretty good idea. And so I had that thought, what about real estate? And within the first week, I did two things. The first thing I did was I called my parents. And I called them and I said, hey, Mom and Dad, I want to do this real estate thing, but I don't have any money. Can you help me? And I don't know if they really got the real estate thing or they thought that was a good idea or not, but they believed in me, and so they said yes. So the second thing I did was I walked into a local brokerage here in Kansas City. It was called Reese Nichols. And at the time, all I really knew, or what I thought I knew, was that they did all the real estate transactions in Kansas City. And I knew they did a lot of them, but that was basically all I knew. So I found one close to my house that we were living in at the time. And I walk in there, and there's one lady sitting in there. And she had kind of been designated to answer the phones, like low person on the totem pole, right? So she was sitting there and just kind of hanging out. And I walk in and I said, hey, I'm interested in buying a rental property. Can you help me? And her eyes got really big and she's like, well, heck yeah, I can help you. She took me out for the next week and we looked at some properties. And I put an offer in on a half duplex in a local market that I live in. And the offer got accepted. And 30-ish or so days later, we closed on that property. I literally stuck the first person in there that showed an ounce of interest in actually renting the place. And I rented it to them, and then I continued after that to just make mistake after mistake after mistake. Hundreds of mistakes, maybe thousands of mistakes. But I did one thing right. I took the leap. You see, I decided to jump in and just go for it and try something new. And so maybe you're sitting there and you're like, you know, I've been thinking about this real estate thing for a while. I've been interested. You're kind of been dabbling around the edges, but you're kind of scared and you kind of don't know what to do. Then I'm telling you, you are watching the right thing right now, because we're going to talk about how to overcome some of those things and get started in real estate. So my first question is, and that you need to answer is, what will real estate investing do to your life? For a lot of people, it's just they want to quit their day job. That's where I was. I wanted to quit the day job. I just didn't know real estate could get me there. But maybe it's for you, it's something more like financial peace, where you just need a little bit of extra income coming in. Or maybe it's time freedom, like it's time freedom in the fact that you don't have a lot of time. And so you need to fit this in. I was a stay-at-home dad and I had to fit that in where I could. So maybe you're there. Or maybe you just want to do something that opens up more free time. You want to do something that gives you more time to do the things that you want to do or be with the people you want to be with. For me, it was purpose. I was looking up to the sky every day like, God, why am I here? What am I doing? And that's when I thought real estate. But no matter why you're doing this, you need to have some motivation. You need to have some goals set. You know, there's this thing in aviation called the 1 in 60 rule. So when a plane takes off, it has a very specific target in mind. And the 1 in 60 rule says that for every 1 degree that plane is off from its target, Every 60 miles it travels, it's going to miss its target by over a mile. So the farther and farther you get away from where you left, the farther you're going to miss your destination only by being off 1 degree. Now, does that mean you don't have to reroute or you don't have to change or you might have to navigate some difficult times? Yes, you do. But you need to have some kind of target in mind. And so today I'd like to talk about 3 different things. We're going to go over some of the most common myths that are out there about real estate, and we're going to debunk those myths. And then I'm going to go over 5 of the most practical ways there are to get started in real estate. Yes, there's a lot of different ways to get started, but I think there's 5 very practical ways to get started. And then I'm going to go over 10 obstacles that I think you need to overcome to get started in real estate. Not only am I going to give you those obstacles, but I'll give you some tips and solutions on how to work through those things. And then I have a few final thoughts and we'll end our time here together. So let's get started. So we're talking about myths. The first myth is that you have to be really wealthy to get started. I actually think you need to flip that around. I actually think you get started in real estate to become wealthy. I already told you in my story that when I started, I had no money. And so you might have to go find somebody. Maybe you're sitting there saying, well, I don't have that opportunity. I don't have that option. Well, there is a lot of people in the real estate world that would love to lend money. And they're out there all over. So you can find the money to get started. And then you take that money, you take that what you've been given, and you go turn it into wealth. So you have to get rid of this myth that you actually have to be already wealthy to get started. The second myth is that real estate is all owned by large corporations. You see, when I got started, I was so naive. I would drive around in my hometown and I would look at these big apartment complexes. I would look at these commercial buildings and I would think, all these have to be owned by like some big conglomerate. I'm way too small to do this. There's no way I can do real estate. Then I was at a meeting one time and I ran into a guy who's become a very good friend of mine. And I walked up to him and I said, hey, what do you do? And I think at the time he'd owned a few residential, but the main thing I took away was that he owned 2 strip malls. And I said, what do you mean you own a strip mall? And he said, well, those buildings, they have 10 storefronts. One's a Pizza Hut, one's a barber, one's a whatever. And I said, wow, you own those? What do you mean you own those? And he's like, well, I'm like, by yourself? And he's like, yeah, I own those by myself. And it was at that moment I thought, I'm not too small for this. Now, I haven't really jumped in the commercial side, and I may or may not do that. But what it made me realize was whether it's a big multifamily unit or it's a commercial building or it's a half duplex, it made me know that I could do this, and you can too. So debunk that myth. Get rid of that says everything's owned by some large corporation. Number 3 is that this myth that real estate takes a lot of time. I go back to my story again, and I told you I was a stay-at-home dad. You see, we had 3 little kids running around when I started, and my wife and I never had any time. We didn't go to the bathroom by ourselves. There was always a kid hanging on our leg. We had to find the time to do the things that were necessary for us to succeed. So I would work while the kids were napping. I would work after they went to bed. I would work before they got up in the morning. Anytime I could find a few minutes, I would work on real estate. I was able to fit it into my life. And a lot of people jump into real estate because that's what works. They have a full-time job, or maybe they're a stay-at-home parent. Maybe they have other things going on. And you can fit real estate in to what's going on in your life. So you have to get over this myth that real estate takes a lot of time, because you can be efficient. You can set up systems that help you do it better and where it doesn't take as long as you think. The number 4 myth is that there's a perfect time to start. I kind of correlate this a lot with either getting married or having a kid. The 2 best things that happened in my life were I got married before I was ready and I had a kid before I was ready. If I would have waited until everything was perfect, I'd still be single and childless. Real estate's the same way. If you think everything's got to be perfect before you take that first step, before you jump off the ledge, you'll be waiting a very long time and maybe forever. The key is to jump in and learn things as you go. So don't think that there's this perfect time to start. The 5th myth is one of my favorites, is that you have to be really smart or have talent. Maybe you don't know me, maybe you do, but I would say I'm not either of those. Now, I'll sit here and tell you that proudly I have a college degree in agriculture. You see, I grew up farming, working on farms, having family members that worked on farms. I knew a lot about driving combines and tractors and how crops grew, but I didn't know a lot about real estate. But I was able to learn everything, and you can too. So don't think you have to have some amazing talent or you have to be somebody special. Anybody can jump in and learn how to do this. The sixth myth is that you have to have an LLC, business cards, or a fancy name just to get started. Let's take those one at a time. Yes, LLCs are important, and I have several of them, but I didn't when we bought that first property. I didn't even hardly know what that was when we bought the first property. So don't think you have to have that in place to go take the first step. And let's talk about business cards. Like so many people that I know, they spend so much time designing their business cards, they spend more time doing that than they do going to get deals. If you don't have a fancy business card, that's okay. You can always do that later. And if somebody needs your contact information, you can get it to them. You can text it to them or write it on a sticky note. So don't think that's the first thing you have to do. And lastly, fancy names. Everybody spends a lot of time developing these fancy names, and it's okay. It's a fun process. I get it. I have several LLC names. I've taken my kids' names, I've squished them into it, and I've made these fun business names, but nobody knows what they are. It's not like they're out there everywhere. So my point behind all this is that make sure you're doing the important things first. Not that these things aren't important, but make sure you're doing the most important things first. Number 7 myth is there's only one way to do things. I think everybody is unique. Everybody's different. There's always a different way of doing things. So yes, I think you need to go out there and learn from people, especially learn from other people's mistakes so that you're not doing the same thing. But remember that you're your own unique person. Maybe there's a better way to do things. And just because someone is doing something a certain way doesn't mean that that's how you have to do it. So learn from other people and then find your own way, your own particular way of doing things. Number 8 myths is a big one. It's a big struggle. So there's this myth that other people and your circumstances determine your success. This is where you're not taking responsibility for your own life. You have to take responsibility for your own life. You have to say, I've been blessed in this way. I'm going to take this blessing and go with it. Or I've had this challenge and I'm going to overcome it. We've all had both. We've all had blessings. We've all had challenges. And whatever those are, you have to own those and take them and do what you can do with them. I would also encourage people not to look at other people's perceived success. You know, we live in a world on social media and all these things. We look out there and we think everybody's doing better than us. But you have no idea what that person has went through. You have no idea the struggles. You have no idea where they've failed. And they may even present themselves as being successful, and they're not. So make sure that you are taking responsibility for your own circumstances. Take control of your own life and make it happen. Number 9 myth is that there are shortcuts that will give you wealth sooner. This is the classic, there's no get-rich-quick scheme. And in real estate, there's not. Now, I think you need to define the difference between money and wealth. I think money is something that you can get quickly. You can go out there and you can flip a house, or you can get a job, or you can do anything. You can do a lot of things that will get you money. But money doesn't always mean wealth. Wealth is developed over time. It takes time. That's where you gather assets. That's where you save. That's where you do all those things that take time. And real estate's the same way. I often tell people that I invest in get-rich-slow assets because my priority is rental properties. Rental properties do not make you wealthy overnight. It takes time. You have to do the work. You have to go through the struggles. You have to be patient and delay that gratification. And the last myth is that there's no deals and that houses are too expensive. I hear this all the time. You know, we've had kind of a big influx in housing prices all over the country, and people are saying, they're too expensive. There's no way, investment properties don't work anymore. I think this is just an excuse. People were saying the same thing 10, 20 years ago, and we're still making it work. I feel like I've overpaid for every property I've ever bought. Every time I give an offer to a seller and they accept, I kind of freak out a little bit because I'm like, man, I should have offered lower. And then they work out. Because real estate, the prices aren't coming down. Real estate continues to go up. And I started when I was 34. I wish I would have started when I was 24. And you're going to be the same way. When you get to 20, 30, 5 years from now, you're going to wish you had bought a property today. So don't regret that decision and go out there and make it happen. I'm going to transition a little bit. That was my 10 myths. We're going to transition a little bit into the 5 practical ways that I think there are to get started if you're just beginning and you're just getting started out. I'm going to call these Brendon's top 5 ways to begin investing. Number 1 is called wholesaling. And you can see I have the Costco logo up there because it's in their name, Costco Wholesale. So let's take Costco's model first, and then I'll show you how that relates to a real estate transaction. So ask yourself, what does Costco do? Well, Costco sources deals. They go out to these manufacturers or these different companies, and they come up with like the top 50 brands of a product, like hairspray. And then they pick the best 2 hairsprays that, one, they think they can get for the best price, they can buy in bulk, that they know consumers want, that they think they can sell the most of, and they get the best deal they can on that product. And then they put it in their stores and they sell it to consumers like you and me for a profit. And whatever they sell it for, minus whatever they paid for it, is what they get to keep. Wholesaling a house is very, very similar. You're the one out there, if you're the wholesaler, you're the one out there sourcing deals. You're the one doing all the work. You're marketing, you're knocking on doors, you're doing those things to find those products that you can get for a good price that you know somebody else will want to buy for more. Because there are investors out there that are unwilling to do that. And so they're willing to buy from the wholesaler. So you would get that property under contract and then you would sell it to somebody else that wants to have it. Now, a few things I think you should be aware of. One is my personal belief is that you should fully intend to purchase the property. There's a lot of wholesalers that will just do the whole assigning piece, and they will put it under contract with the intention to assign it to somebody else. But then when something doesn't work out or that falls through, then the seller gets the house back. And my philosophy is if you're getting that property at such a good deal, then why don't you go buy it? So I think you should fully intend to purchase the property. And I want you to be ethical. I want you to communicate with these sellers. Often sellers are trusting that wholesaler because they're struggling, they're desperate, they need help, they don't understand how everything works. And they want that wholesaler to help them through this situation. So be ethical, communicate with the seller about what's going on, what you're going to do, and what you're going to try to do. I also think that we live in a consumer protection world. And there's going to be some regulations that come down on wholesaling, and maybe they're already happening in your market. But be aware if this is something where you want to start out wholesaling, that you are careful of any regulations in your area. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to share this one word called wholesale. Wholesale is wholesaling and retail put together. So when I'm talking wholesale, that's kind of off market. That's where you're going, finding those properties that nobody else is looking at and the seller is struggling to get rid of. And then you get that property and you clean it up a bit. Maybe you just clean the property out. Maybe you trim the bushes in front. Maybe you wash the outside of it. You just do a little facelift to it. And then you actually put it on the market. Put it on the MLS, put it on the retail market, and sell it to an end buyer or a flipper or whoever wants to have that. That is a really great model to make some money if you want to get into wholesaling. Hopefully that makes sense. We're going to go on to the second one. The second one is what is called or known as a house hack. A house hack is where you buy a 2 to 4 unit building, usually a duplex, a triplex, a quadplex, something like that, something 4 units or less. And you're going to live in 1 unit and rent out the others. So similar to this duplex right here, you're going to live in half and you're going to rent out the other half. To me, this is one of the best ways to start when you're young. If you're young out there and you're single and you're looking to jump into real estate, but you're not quite sure what to do, I would really encourage you to look at this opportunity. So you can buy this duplex, you can live in half, and you can rent out the other side. Here's a couple things. One is I think that's definitely harder when you have a family. One, you're living in a smaller unit, you're living next to your tenants, you're living in a multifamily, so keep that in mind. Also, you may be moving a little bit more often than staying put for a long time. Second thing is that you can get really good owner-occupied financing. As long as you're intending to live in that property for at least 1 year, you can get owner-occupied financing because it's considered your primary home. So you can get better terms, lower down payments, longer amortization schedules on your loans and things like that. So that's a very good way to get started. And then not only that, but you're renting out the other side, and that's either covering your mortgage, or maybe you're making money, or at least reducing your expenses, which is the first goal, is to get your personal finances under control. And that can help you do that. And the best thing about house hacking is you can do that over and over. So for instance, you buy that duplex, you live in it for a year, rent out the other side. The next year, you go buy another duplex. And you live in one of those units and rent out the other side and keep the other one. So now you have 4 units. You're living in one and renting out 3. If you did that every year for 5 years, you would be well on your way to a great future. The next potential idea is what I call a live and flip. I have seen several people do this and do this very successfully. So a live and flip is you're going to go find that distressed property that either the seller is struggling a little bit or the house needs some work. But whatever the case, the house is still livable. The utilities are on, the roof is not leaking, everything is functional enough where you can actually live in it. One of the best things about the live and flip is as long as you live in that property 2 out of the last 5 years, it is considered your primary home. And so when you go to sell that home, you can avoid your capital gains taxes. So on investment properties, when you sell an investment property, you get taxed on those capital gains. But if it's your personal home, up to an exclusion limit, either as a single or a married couple, you can avoid those taxes. And so that's something you can do every 2 years. The good thing about this is, again, you can get that good owner-occupied financing because you're going to live in it as your primary home. So you can get that primary home financing. Now, you have to be okay with living in a construction zone. You might have to live without your kitchen for a while it gets renovated, or a bathroom for a while it gets renovated. You have to be okay with contractors coming in and out and dust all over the place and things like that. Again, I think this might be harder if you have a family because you're living in that construction zone and you're also moving every so often. The next opportunity is your traditional flip. This is what you see on HGTV, where you take a property, it's been run down, it hasn't been well taken care of, you get it for under market price, you're going to put some money into it, fix it up, and then sell it for as much as you can. This is a great use for those hard and private money lenders. There's a lot of them out there. The great thing about hard money is they're going to give you the money for the purchase and the rehab if you buy right. I think flipping, which I've done before early on in my career, is a great way to build capital. You can go out there and flip a home. You can take that money to either invest in other things or live on for a while or do whatever. So it's a great way to build some capital quickly. There are 2 things I think you need to know. One is you really need to nail down your numbers. That means your ARV, your after repair value. What is this house going to be worth after we rehab it and get it fixed up? You have to know that number. Second thing you need to know is, what is it going to cost to fix this up? What is my rehab going to cost? And if you know those 2 numbers, then you know what you need to buy that property at. Typically, people are buying somewhere around 65 to 70% of the value. So if you do flips, you will have some tax implications because now you've created a job. You've created a short-term event that when you sell that property, you're going to have some income tax that's due. You've also created a job. So you need to, if you're going to do this full time, while you're fixing one up, you need to be out searching for the next opportunity so that when you get your first one sold, that you have the next one ready to go. And I truly believe that speed is important. So the quicker you can get this done, the better usually that the deal works out. Every flip I ever did, I bought it, I rehabbed it, and I sold it within 120 days. Most hard money lenders are going to give you 6 to 9 months. I would recommend trying to get it done in 6 months because that way you don't risk the market changing as much on the sales side. And I also think that when you hold a property longer, not only do you have holding costs and things like that, but a lot of times you put more money into it than you intended to. So get it bought, get it rehabbed, and get it sold. And last way to get started in real estate is my personal favorite, and that would be rentals. Again, I already mentioned this earlier that rentals are not get rich quick. You have to stay in it, be committed to it, and stay in it for the long haul. Now, the negative part of rentals is a lot of times, yes, you have to manage them. You have to deal with tenants, or you have to manage the manager. If you don't think you want to deal with tenants or you don't think you're good at it, hire a good property manager. There's a lot of them out there, and a lot of them will do a better job than you. And you might have to give up a little money to do that, but it might be worth it in your scenario. One thing about rental properties is they are so hard to mess up. You can buy them wrong, you can rehab them wrong, you can manage them wrong. You can pretty much mess up wherever, and usually they work out. For the most part, they always work out. If you hold something long enough, I promise it will work out in the end. In my opinion, rentals are the best way to build wealth. There's actually 4 ways to make money with a rental property. There's cash flow, there's loan pay down, there's depreciation, which is a tax savings, and there's appreciation, which is the value of the home going up. No other strategy except for maybe the house hack gets close to that. All these other strategies, you make money one way. Rental properties, you make money 4 ways. You don't even have to nail all of those. You can just hit 2 or 3 of those 4 and you'll be fine. And one of my favorite things about rentals is you get a chance to leave a legacy. I have 3 kids. Someday I hope to have grandkids, and maybe if I live long enough, great grandkids. And I would love to leave them a legacy, and rentals allow you to do that. Getting started in real estate can be difficult. It is a challenge. And there's lots of obstacles we have to go through to get there. Let's address some of those now. I'm going to tell you 10 obstacles, and then I'm going to tell you some tips on how to get through those. So the first one is you have to be willing to work when nobody else wants to. This might be late at night. This might be weekends. It might be holidays. We bought a property a couple years ago, another half duplex, which you'll kind of see a theme in that. But we bought another half duplex and it was vacant. We had just bought it. It needed a little bit of work. So I wanted to get it fixed up so I could get it rented. It was 4th of July. So I told my wife, I said, hey, I have all day today. I'm going to go over there and work on this because I didn't want that thing just sitting there empty, because the faster I get it done, the faster I can get it rented. So I went over and worked on 4th of July while everybody else, neighbors and friends, are cooking burgers. They're looking for fireworks. They're doing all these different things. I was over there working. Now, you're going to have to be willing to do that as well. Maybe you don't get to relax as much in the evening or things like that because you're working. Now, how do you get past this? My suggestion is that you find other times to relax and enjoy time with your family. So if you happen to have to work all weekend, the great thing about real estate is it's flexible. Then you can take Monday off. Or like a common thing that would happen to me was I would have to do something in the evening, like go show a property or do something. I would miss dinner with the kids or miss putting them to bed. The great thing was I was free, and the next day I could go eat lunch with them at their school. So I'm not telling you to give up all that time, not having any relaxed time, or not being able to spend that time with your family. But you might have to shift it a little bit and find other times to make that a priority. All right, second thing you need to overcome is very similar. It's you need to be willing to do things that nobody else wants to do and not get any credit for it. What does that mean? That means you might have to call tired landlords. Okay, tired landlords are landlords that are worn out. They're tired of managing the properties. They're just tired of dealing with it. It's a great way to find deals, but it's difficult to do. It's difficult to make that phone call. You might have to do that. You might have to be willing to buy properties sight unseen. When I was flipping properties, one of the better places that I was finding things was online auctions. The problem with that was a lot of those properties you couldn't get inside to see them, so you would have to do a quick drive-by, make your assessment based on what you could see from the outside, and be willing to buy something that you hadn't even seen the inside of. I have pulled out yards and yards of the dirtiest smelling, grossest carpet you have ever seen. You might have to pull out nasty carpet too. You might have to be willing to sweat, get dirty, bleed. I bleed on every project we do. It's so common around our household now. What I do is when I cut myself, I take a picture of it, I text it to my kids, and I say, hey, guess what Dad's doing today? And they automatically know I'm on another project because I'm already bleeding. So you have to be willing to do those things. But how do you get past this obstacle? Well, I think you celebrate your victories. I call it you pay yourself. It doesn't always have to be something big. If you've done something small, then celebrate small. Maybe it's a Dairy Queen cake. Just treat yourself to something. If it's something big, go do something big. Maybe it's a nice dinner or a vacation. Anything that you find some joy in. If you don't do this, it will be hard to keep going. It's hard you're wondering all the time, like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Pay yourself so that you can be motivated. Okay? Number 3 thing to overcome is that you need to be able to give up your pride when something doesn't work out. Listen, we're all going to make mistakes. So I'm going to tell you, and if you're an English teacher, please don't be mad at me, but I'm going to use a double negative here, and I'm going to say, don't not do things to avoid embarrassment. You're going to mess up. We're all going to mess up. There's only one perfect person that's ever walked this earth, and his name is Jesus, and you and I aren't him. So if you jump into real estate, you're going to make mistakes, and you need to be okay with that. Now, how do you become okay with that? How do you overcome this? Easier said than done, but I think you just get over yourself. You have to own it. You have to bring it to light. Okay? You have to go tell somebody right away. That's where real estate groups, meetups, getting involved in places are super key. Because you can walk in there and you can tell the group and you can say, hey, I did this thing yesterday and I blew it. I messed up. Because you see, the faster you own it, the faster you can overcome it. So that's how you get over it. You go tell somebody, you own it and get over it. Number 4 obstacle is that you don't listen to people who tell you what won't work or who have never done it. See, this is similar to listening to a broke person tell you how to get rich. Like, if they don't have any money, why would I listen to that person about how to make money? If I want to learn how to make money, I'm going to listen to somebody that's very good at it. That's who I'm going to go to. Or here's something more similar that happens more in the real estate world. It's you're talking to somebody and they say, oh, managing rentals is just horrific. It's terrible. You know, you have to deal with the tenant calls at late at night. You have to do all this terrible stuff. And I say, okay, well, how many rentals do you own? And they say, well, I don't own any. Well, how do you know that managing tenants is terrible then? Well, everybody says it is. So I'm like, you're listening to people and then you're telling me not to do it, but you've never done it yourself. That doesn't make any sense. So don't listen to people who have never done it. And a lot of people are going to try to hold you back. They're going to say sometimes it's hard for people to see other people succeed. And so they might tell you, hey, that's never going to work. Even though they've never done it and never tried it, or maybe it didn't work for them, but it can work for you. So how do you overcome this? Well, I think you go find other people and investors that have already done it and done it well. Okay? Because no matter how successful you become, there's always somebody that's more successful, that's doing it better, that has other ideas that can help you. So what you need to do is you need to go find the encouragers, not the discouragers. Go find somebody that's going to cheer for you and champion you rather than somebody that's going to hold you back. Okay? Real estate, they're out there. There are people that will believe in you, that will help you, and that want you to succeed. Go search those people out. Number 5 obstacle is to stop overanalyzing everything. Don't overanalyze. Listen, analyzing real estate is not hard. Okay? When I look at a rental property, I don't use some fancy spreadsheet. I have a formula. You know what the formula is? It's what will this property rent for minus what are my monthly expenses equals cash flow. If I can live with that number, then I buy it. If I can't live with that number, then I either renegotiate it or I don't buy it. It's very simple. There's not some fancy formula. And that has worked every time. How do you get past overanalyzing properties? Well, you toss the spreadsheets, you tear them up and throw them away, and you take the performance calculators and you throw them as far as you can. Because all these things do is tell you not to buy a property. You're going to put all these numbers in. It's going to spit out some kind of number, some kind of return that you're not going to be happy with. Or maybe it does or it doesn't. But it causes you to look at it so long that it paralyzes you. Don't use spreadsheets to make the numbers work. Don't overcomplicate it. Make something simple that you can do quickly, that makes you confident and comfortable, and go with it. Number 6 obstacle is that you need to be careful about getting too emotional. Don't try to get too emotional about what that property is. You see, when I first started, I had, 2 or 3 or 4 rentals, and I would freak out every time a big storm was coming, or I live in Kansas, so we have to worry about hail and tornadoes, and I would go, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose everything I've worked for. I'm going to lose it all in one night. And I would panic. And then there became a time where I thought, you know what? All these houses they're just tools to make money. Okay, they're just boards and concrete, nothing more. Everything can be fixed or rebuilt. It's okay. So calm yourself down. And don't freak out when you walk in a property and it needs some repairs. You know, a lot of times people, they don't want a property because they think it needs too much. But remember, everything can be fixed. And don't get emotional about what you think a property can sell for. Okay? When you're thinking about what is this going to sell for, don't think it's going to sell for more than it actually will. So how do you get past this emotional obstacle? I think you do three things. One is you look at comps. That's how you solve what it's going to sell for. If you're looking at comps and they're all at $300,000, don't think you can make that property worth $400,000. If you do, that's a bonus. But calm yourself down and say, this is a $300,000 house. The other thing you can do is you can get an expert opinion. I told you, some people walk into it and they get scared because of what the condition the house is in, and you might be thinking the foundation's terrible, the whole house is going to fall down tomorrow. Well, call a foundation company. They might come in and they might look at that big crack that you think is the worst thing ever, and they might say, well, we can epoxy that for $1,000 and it'll be fine. Okay, so calm down, get an expert opinion. And lastly, the best way to get past emotions is to make another offer. I remember I used to struggle so much. I would work hard, I'd analyze these deals, I'd get ready, I'd finally get up the nerve to make an offer, and the seller would say no, or we couldn't come to an agreement, and I would just be devastated, like, wow, I thought I was going to get this. I had the whole plan worked out. I'd worked so hard on it, and I didn't get it. And so that gets easier and easier. The first time it might take weeks. The next time it might take a week. The next time it might take 2 days, then a day. But the best way to get over disappointment is to move forward. So just go make another offer. Number 7 is an important one. This is the obstacle of making sure that your spouse is on board. And this is not something that you can force, but you have to find some way to work together. I asked my wife about this the other day because when we just got started, I didn't know really how she felt. All I knew was she was very supportive of me. She said, well, actually, I was pretty scared. Now, she was scared, but she was supportive. So it doesn't mean that you have to be in it together. My wife was doing her own thing. She was running her own business. And so she didn't have a lot of time or want to jump in with me, but she never held me back from what I wanted to do. We were both supportive of each other. Now, you might be sitting there saying, well, I am having a little trouble with that right now. Here's what I would suggest to you. Take your spouse and go on a date and visualize your future. Take them out for a nice dinner, a coffee, lunch, whatever you guys want to do. Go out for a date, your favorite thing to do, where you can sit down across from each other eye to eye and then ask them, where do you see us in 5 or 10 years? What do you want? And then zip your lips, close your mouth, and let them speak. Let them tell you what they want. And then you can respond with how you think real estate will help you get there. Now, I don't mean ROI, return on investment. I don't mean spew numbers at them, because chances are, if they're not on board, they haven't studied real estate like you. So where numbers make sense to you and you can tell them how much money you're going to make and all this, that's just in and out, in one ear and out the other. What I would suggest is talk to them about the freedom real estate will bring. Talk to them about how real estate will help you get to that goal of what they just told you they wanted. Okay, number 8 is the obstacle of asking dumb questions. You see, I don't think there is such thing as a dumb question. Now, my kids would tell me otherwise, but I think that all questions are good and can lead to some kind of knowledge. And what would happen to me was I would go to meetings and there would be people sitting around there and I would be too scared to ask. So I would leave there wishing I had asked a certain thing, going home thinking, well, now what do I do to get that information? So as I went more and more, I got bolder and bolder. I would raise my hand and I'd finally ask that question. I thought it was the dumbest question ever, but I was willing to put myself out there, willing to ask it. I would ask it and then I'd look around and everybody was shaking their heads because they had the same questions. They were just scared to ask. So a lot of times what you think is a dumb question, most of the other people around you are wondering the same thing. But how do you get past that? How do you get past this fear of dumb questions? Well, what I did one year was I made a goal with myself. I said, what I'm going to do this year is one time a month, I'm going to ask somebody who's doing better than me, that knows better than me. I'm going to take them out for lunch or coffee or something and ask them the questions that I'm afraid to ask. So I did that. I would ask somebody that I would meet and I'd say, hey, do you want to meet for lunch? I did that 12 times in 1 year. It cost me $20 a time. And we would sit down, I'd face-to-face them for an hour, hour and a half, and I would just ask them anything and everything I wanted. That year was the best year I ever had in real estate. Because most people, if you take them out, they're in this industry for sure, they're so willing to help, they're so willing to share, they're so willing to answer those questions that you are afraid to ask. And one of the best things that happened to me that year was I made some really good friends that I'm still friends with now. Number 9 obstacle is you have to be loyal. You have to be loyal with your lenders, your contractors, your insurance brokers, your title companies, everybody and anybody. Use them again and again. Stop price checking everybody. Stop pinning everybody against each other. Find that relationship. Now, yes, that's harder when you're getting started. But start with the intention of developing those relationships. And then develop those relationships over time and use those people again and again. Now, does that mean you never have to price check or check on somebody to make sure that they're being fair? No, you might have to do that sometimes. But if you develop those relationships and you know they're treating you well, then be loyal back to them. I don't have trouble getting contractors to come out because they know if they come give me a bid, I've used them, I know they're going to do well, they're giving me a fair price, I will hire them and I will get them paid. We have that kind of relationship. And I get treated well, just like they do. Now, how do you work through this? Here's something I did. When I was flipping properties, I was working with particularly one guy, and he was doing most of the work. I was hiring out a few things, but he was doing the majority of the work, him and his crew. So what I would do is I would get this house under contract. I would walk him through it, and I would literally just give him my budget up front and tell him exactly what I wanted. And I would say, here's what I bought it for, here's what I want to spend, this is what I'm going to sell it for, this is what I'd like to do the property. And he would look at that and he'd be like, well, we can do most of that, but we can't really do this, or whatever. But we would go back and forth until we had an agreement that this is what he was going to do the work for and what he could get it done. But I would be way up front with it about it. I wasn't trying to get $30,000 worth of work done for 20 grand. He knew exactly what I was trying to get out of it. So I would just be really upfront with him. And we developed a great relationship where we really made some good deals happen. My last obstacle that I think you need to overcome is this one little small word, but it has a huge meaning, and it is fear. You have to be willing to take a chance. We already talked about it some, but you're going to fail at certain things. But if you keep at it, you will not fail at real estate. So, what is fear and how do you overcome it? I think the best way is to ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? Might you lose some money? Yeah, you can lose some money. I actually lost some money on a deal. That might happen, but it didn't kill me. Maybe you'll waste time. You spend a lot of time on stuff. That happened to me. I would take all this time, I would do this stuff, think it was gonna, and then it wouldn't work out, and I was devastated, like, holy cow, I just spent all this time on it, and it didn't work out. That might happen. What about right now? I'm sitting in front of this camera and I'm fearful. I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to fall off the chair. I'm going to say something wrong. I'm going to make a fool out of myself. But what's the worst thing that can happen? I have a wife and 3 kids at home that no matter what I do today, how much I mess up or what I say, they're still going to love me. And I can live with that. Okay? So ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? Usually it's not nearly as bad as you can think. And most of the time, it's not going to kill you. So maybe you're sitting here right now and you've watched it, you've hung out with me this whole time, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm doing all those things. Everything you just spoke about, I'm doing it. And I'm still struggling. I'm still stuck. I don't know what to do. Well, I'm going to ask you another question. Are you really trying? Are you really trying? Are you going to every meeting you can and then going for a long time? You see, what happens is people go to a meeting or they go somewhere and they don't get out of it what they think they're gonna. And so they immediately walk out and they say, well, that didn't work out. I'm not going back. No, you have to go again and again and again. You have to become so familiar there. People treat you like on that TV show Cheers, there's Norm. And when he walks in the bar and he's like, hey, everybody, what do they turn and say? Their immediate response is, Norm, because he's there. Be that person at your meetings. Be the person that when you're not there, people miss you. They wonder where you are. At the very least, be that person that when you walk in, they know who you are. They know your name. I made a pact with myself a while back that I wouldn't work with anybody that I hadn't seen at a meeting or known for at least 6 months. Because what would happen was I'd walk in, we'd be networking, somebody'd come up, they'd shoot me their business card, contractor, somebody'd say, I'm the best contractor out there. Here's my business card, call me. And then I'd never see them again. And I'm like, why would I call when you came once and then I never saw you again? So you have to network, keep going to meetings again and again and again. Second thing to show me that you're really trying is you have to read a ton of books. And I know some of you out there are like, well, I don't read. I don't like to read. Well, get over it or get yourself some audiobooks. But you have to read books. You have to do things to better yourself. Now, there's great real estate books. There's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. A lot of people know this book. A lot of people have read this book. That's a great place to start. Or maybe it's the E-Myth Real Estate Investor. Great book. Or maybe it's this one called The Book on Rental Property Investing. Those are 3 great real estate books. But not only do you need to be reading books about real estate, is read books about anything to help develop yourself. When I had little kids, I ran into this book by Hal Runkle, and it's called Scream-Free Parenting. If you have little kids, read this book. It'll change your world. Okay? Or a while back, a guy came to our church, and his name was Kevin Lehman. And I enjoyed him speaking so much to us at our church, I looked into his book series, and I ordered one called Have a New You by Friday. And it's all about starting on Monday and doing 5 things throughout the week that changes who you are. And it was really great. So I went up to my wife and I said, you remember Kevin Lehman that spoke at our church a while back? And she said, yeah, I really liked him. And I said, well, I ordered his book and it's really good. You might look into some stuff he's got. And so she ordered a book. It comes in the mail. She pulls it out. And hers did not say what mine said. It said, hers was titled, Have a New Husband by Friday. I don't know how that's fair or not. But maybe it's something for you. It's your spiritual walk. Okay, I read this book a couple years ago with a Bible study group of mine, and I thought it made sense as I'm doing a presentation on taking the leap. But this one is called, If You Want to Walk on Water, You Have to Get Out of the Boat. Okay, all about the story of getting out of the boat to walk to Jesus. And lastly, this is the most recent book I read. It's called End Boring. It's all about public speaking and how to not make it boring. So I don't know if that one's working or not. You'd have to tell me that. So make sure you're reading a ton of books and bettering yourself every day. And lastly, we live in a podcast world. So go out there and listen to a ton of podcasts, hours of podcasts, okay? Get yourself a nice set of headphones, something that's comfortable that you can wear while you're doing everything you want to do. So I listen to podcasts while I'm driving, while I'm walking my dogs, while I'm mowing the yard. Anytime I can, I'm listening to podcasts. So turn off the radio. Get off of social media, stop watching TV all the time, and start listening to podcasts. So what is it for you? You're almost done with this video. I'm about ready to stop here. What is it for you? Is it something small, something you can do within the next 5, 10 minutes, hour? Is it something big, something you can do by the end of this week or the end of this day? What is it for you? Because remember, tomorrow never comes. Because tomorrow, there'll be another tomorrow. And the next day, there's another tomorrow. Just remember that once you jump in, you will figure it out along the way. You'll be forced to figure it out. And that sometimes is the best motivation of all. So jump in and then figure it out. Because remember, small steps create huge results. You can't fail at real estate if you don't quit. Let me leave you with a couple quotes. One is from Martin Luther King that says, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. It will come into view the closer and closer you get. So just keep taking that next step. And this last one is the first step towards getting somewhere is to decide you're not going to stay where you are. See, I didn't really know where I was going or what I was jumping to. All I knew is I didn't want to stay where I was. So if that's where you are, you can make a decision today to jump in and take the leap and get started in real estate. Thank you so much. I am completely honored to be able to speak to you today. I hope this was helpful. I'm humbled that you took time out of your day to pay attention, and I thank you so much. God bless.